Hi, everyone. My name's Gerry Huntman. I'm the Managing Director of IFWG Publishing. Nearly 2 months ago, not quite 2 months ago, we released a quite a unique fantasy novel by H.K. Stubbs. And I'm not going to say much about it because I'd rather the author talk about it. H.K. is Helen Stubbs. And Helen, I've got a number of reasons to have a love for this book, apart from the book itself. Helen has written a number of short stories for our publishing company before, for our top-end anthologies, and the credibility of those short stories allowed us to easily open the door and have a look at her debut novel manuscript. And over the process of time, we have the book there. So, without further ado, I'll introduce Helen to this interview. Hello,
Hi, Gerry.
how are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Very good. Now, for the audience, because the audience can be anywhere in the world, we
Yep.
are both, even though we're talking virtually, it's just the necessity of circumstance. We're both
Yep.
in the same city, the Gold Coast in Queensland in Australia. And we're a subtropical area, but at the moment it's a bit on the cool side.
It
Uh,
is chilly,
yeah, that's why
but
I'm wearing
still
a jacket.
maybe not around 20 degrees outside or something. Not too cold, not freezing.
So anyway, so just so people know, and obviously Australian accents will give it away too for those who are in the know. But
Yep.
but anyway, look, the reason why we're having this meeting is because we haven't had the opportunity to have a good chat and share with people your book. The book, like I said, was released in a couple of months ago, back in May,
Mhm.
and it's already had some very good reception, and it really is an opportunity for those who are interested to get a bit more of an insight into it, because apart from reading it and maybe looking at reviews, there really isn't a much better way to get an insight than to talk to the author. So this is more.
Absolutely. I love author interviews too. So,
I'm
yeah.
glad. I'm glad. Anyway, look, I think the usual thing that we want to do is to first get people to know you better. So let's talk about yourself. Don't go too much into the nitty gritty of the book yet, but just about
Yeah.
yourself broadly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think like a lot of writers, I have always written, like it's something that I've always loved to do. And as soon as I sort of moved into my adult phase, I started trying to write novels, which is just such a massive thing, like a massive undertaking, and there's so much that you have to learn. So I set off on that journey of learning to write, and learning to write fiction, which is a different skill set. And over that time, I've done like a lot of courses, become involved in the community, even run a little writers' centre on the Gold Coast. Helped put on the National Science Fiction Convention, received grants to edit anthologies and produce those, as well as writing short stories and submitting them to publishers like you and having those published. But I think like it is really a journey, the writing journey. And one of the best things is the people that you meet and the things that you do along the way. And in that sense, it's actually similar to a climbing journey. Like I think those journeys are really, really similar. The skills that you pick up, the things that you learn, like it's just a continual process of improvement, I think.
Okay. You mentioned climbing, and that's a fantastic segue, right? It really is.
Yeah.
The the I mean, obviously, and you will talk a little bit about it, of course, and perhaps now's the time to talk about how you integrated climbing into your novel Starstone, um, and where does it fit in your life, and how did you incorporate that into your book?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to things to do, writing and climbing are my two absolute obsessions. Of course, I love my family and I have to do all those family caring things, and I have jobs as well. But when it comes to my free time, it's writing and it's climbing. Um, and so to bring those together into a novel was like like the ultimate, it's kind of like living the dream. But I found because so there are different types of climbing. I do a lot of bouldering, which is where we were at the gym at the book launch. So it's that sort of indoor ropeless low down climbing. And then probably the opposite extreme to that is where you're going all the way up a mountain. So it's like alpine climbing, which is completely different. So as I began to write this book with my characters climbing a mountain, I thought, well, I really don't have that much experience in that area. When I was younger, I climbed Mount Warning, like I've done a couple of little climbs, but there was a lot that I had to learn. So there was that combined process of learning about the climbing and learning about the writing, and it just sort of became more and more involved.
No, that's fair enough. The Okay, before we get to climbing, let's go back to the writing side first, a teeny bit. You mentioned before that, and look, it's not an uncommon thing. In fact, it's a beautiful thing that people who are writers, I'm a writer too. Part of the fun part of the process of being a writer is just the enjoyment of being a writer, writing itself.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that you did various things, but where did you get serious about writing? And I mean, you obviously went through a number of ratchet points. One of the ratchet points is when you started to seriously sell short fiction.
Yeah.
And then of course we've got the next ratchet point, which is your debut novel. But
Yeah.
describe a little bit about the journey in that respect.
Yeah. So I think short stories were how I built my craft, I would say. So I learnt those principles of writing, like, point of view, description, plot, have the novel having the right shape and the feelings, sort of the emotional beats ringing true, and also designing my characters so to create a really satisfying ending, because I think that's really important. And I think breaking into the short story market feels a lot easier in Australia than breaking into the novel market, though self-publishing is an option as well, but that wasn't something that I thought I had the skills to do. But I think it's also being inspired by friends who are publishing novels. So we're in this journey together, and beginning to write novels. And I'd say this is probably my 5th novel, or maybe even my 6th. But none of those really were really good enough, I think, is the thing. So, but through writing those, I honed my skills and learnt to write. Though I was continuing, I would say, to learn to write through Staerstone, through learning about the characters, what felt really satisfying in their journeys, and then feeding that more into the plot and developing that other characters in those ways as well.
Okay, it's interesting that you mentioned the satisfying part of it, because it is a satisfying component to it. But you mentioned the 4 or 5 novels that you've done before. Are they ever going to be revisited, or have you closed them up completely?
They could be. There's probably a lot of work to doing them. Like the first one. Do you have that first novel that you wrote? Now you read it and it's just so bad, or do you not have that? Like a lot of writers do.
I've got some bad stuff. Yeah,
in the drawers.
but some of my bad stuff is so bad that it's bad stuff, right? It'll never be.
It's cringeworthy.
Yeah, but on the other hand, there's I've sort of honed the skill. I do this with short fiction as well. I hone the skill of seeing something and saying, you know what? No, that's not well written, but give me time, and the concept is good.
Massage this and rework it. But I'd say, my first novel in some ways does perhaps has the same spirit as Staerstone, But over sort of the 20 years of learning to write, it's a very, very different story. But I think there is potential for some of them, though some of them are like quite different. One of them is a magic realist one, which is sort of, it's inspired by my experience as a parent with a child with a disability, but it's like very different to that as well. But it would be more literary, so quite different. Most of the others are probably science fiction, fantasy, but they would take a lot of effort. It's such a commitment to make a novel good, I think. And I have a lot more stories within this Staerstone world, which is so developed now in my mind. And I know my characters so well. So I think I definitely want to work on more stories related to that.
Okay, fair enough. And look, you've already hinted at the point, and it is probably the most important point of all, is that as a writer and you go through your journey, if there's any that don't make it, they still contributed to you being a writer. So
absolutely,
it's not a waste at all.
No. Do they say you have to write 1 million words before you start to write good words? I don't know. I feel like I've done my million.
It could be true, yeah. When I was an editor for a long time, after about 2 million words of editing, your eyes pop out, but you're actually a better editor.
You learn. You continue to learn.
But look, I'm getting back to. I mean, I'm still fascinated by the climbing side of it. You already mentioned a little bit about it, but how do you write a story that, and certainly what are the processes that you went through to write a story that's an enjoyable fantasy adventure, plus other things we'll talk about later, but still at the same time develop the uniqueness of what it is by having a really strong slab of subsection of climbing. What was the process you went through?
So I'd say, like, first, most importantly, it's really important to have a really solid cast of characters. And the mistake I often used to make when I would start writing would be to have a solitary character. And I pretty quickly realized that wasn't going to work, because I didn't want to just have character versus nature or versus environment. I think there's, apart from in like real life sort of factual autobiographical stories of person versus nature, where people are surviving adversity, like, I think that's really interesting, and it sustains people's interest because it's about a real person. But I think in a fictional sense, a reader has a limited capacity to remain interested in a story like that. So I think a really important thing was to not have too much climbing. And as a climber, I also didn't want them to always be having a bad time climbing. I wanted to show the fun side of climbing. So the answer to that was to just sort of limit the climbing, really. Though there's still possibly a lot of climbing in the book, and it has been described as a bit of an ode to climbing, but also to have a really solid world built around that, and a global crisis, a threat coming from both underground and the stars. So to have all that drama unfolding around it, and to cast the climbers within their culture, and the importance of their quest, I felt was really important. And we also see them both, like the two main characters, Zerica and Andalou, their sort of struggles with their parents, with their culture, for different reasons, but both of them because they want to climb, and how they're seen as dirtbags, like that whole underdog aspect, which I think a lot of young people might identify with when when you're in your 20s or teens and you're trying to work out where you fit within the world and what you want out of life, and sometimes that doesn't really gel with what other people expect of you. I think both my characters are going through that, and so those elements are really important, I think, to make the story work.
About world building, we've talked about characters, we've talked about some of the technicalities, so we've actually covered a lot of the dimensions that if you could almost say are structural about Staerstone.
Mm.
maybe now's the opportunity to just give a little bit of a discussion to our readers, potential
Mm.
readers, I suppose you could say, about what Staerstone is about, without giving away anything that would disappoint them if they know.
No, well, we're not gonna. I totally am not gonna give away any spoilers. So I describe it as adventure fantasy with rock climbing and romance. And like I think I just came out with that through, like, people would say, "What's it about?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know." But that's a good way to describe it. And the other way is that it's a quest up a magical mountain, in which the two main characters are enemies. They're from enemy peoples, but they have feelings for each other. They're supposed to kill each other if they can. And they've been told to choose between saving their world, or they've been told to save their world by taking the other one out. But as if they get to know each other, they have to rely upon each other because they've lost everyone else. And when you rely on someone, when you're climbing with them, if they're belaying you, your life is really in their hands. So that's an interesting tension as well. So yeah, it's their story and how they work through that problem of having to the other one.
Okay. And actually, what you did was you also you just described a massive metaphor by talking
Mm.
about I mean, you've got climbing as part of the world building, as part of the interest of the story. It's a sort of a plot mechanism, etc., etc. But at the same time, it's a metaphor, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I assume that was absolutely intentional.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, we do. You know, we all rely on each other in life. It is like, yeah, just
Yeah.
like a serious
Okay.
relationship.
Yeah, fair enough.
I hope I didn't give away too much then.
No, I don't think you did. I mean, look, the rule of thumb from an editorial point of view is you can almost get away with telling half half the story, the first half
Yeah.
of the story.
Yeah.
You
I think
certainly,
if people know it's a romance, then it's almost inevitable that they will at some point be spending some time together. But
okay.
yeah.
Now you mentioned the word romance twice now,
Hmm.
and that's a very interesting, really interesting topic for me.
Mhm.
I'll start with, I'm not a romance publisher nor writer.
Mhm. Yeah.
But no, it doesn't mean I don't have people falling in love and lots of love things. But
Mhm.
this is where I'm leading to. I mean, and by the way, it's not a criticism at all.
No.
Uh, what I'm saying is that I think some people who would read your book would probably view it as a fantasy adventure novel that just so happens to have romance in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Just like a romance novel could potentially have murder in it, but it's not a
Mm.
murder novel.
Yeah. Yeah.
But on the other hand, you have on numerous occasions, not just here,
Mm.
describe use the word romance. I,
Mm.
I I'm interested to know whether you're using it because it's just a way of easily conveying another dimension of your book, or
Mm.
whether you feel that romance is in fact um, a structural element of the book that deserves to be more or less alongside fantasy.
Yeah, look, it's hard to say. I mean, a good thing is that the feedback I've had from people, like people said, I wouldn't usually read anything with romance in it or even want to say that, but like I really love this book. I would say that key are the adventure is probably key. It's within a fantasy world, so there are definitely those fantasy elements. I think the romance is maybe a little sort of setback from like those other key genres. Um, but I mean, I think you also described it as a thriller at one point as well.
Yep.
And I think that that any really great text has all those elements. And I think that that's something that I learned from Save the Cat, that a reader wants to experience everything within a book. And not to say that every story has to have a romantic element. Obviously, a lot of them don't. But I think it can provide a really satisfying experience to have like all those many emotions evoked within the reader. So, from I guess a technical point of view, that's one reason it's there. And also, I think it grew naturally out of the relationships. And it's such a fascinating change. Or, I mean, yeah, I find it to be a fascinating concept that you're supposed to kill this person, but you have feelings for them. Like, I just think that's a really good conflict to go alongside everything else.
No, it is. It is. No. I think I understand where you're coming from, and I understand better what you're saying. The the in the publishing business, it is important on occasion to use short, pithy descriptors, because it's the only way. Because most people don't want to hear more than 2 seconds or 3 seconds of words. They want to get a
It's the
sense.
pitch.
Yeah, it's the pitch.
Mhm.
And I absolutely think that using the term romance is cool, and I think it's probably correct. But there's such a difference between the descriptors and I suppose you could call metadata versus a 20-minute conversation about what this is all about.
And maybe it's tricky to span all those genres as well. Like from a marketing perspective, I think, I think that when we were coming up with the cover, like that was one tricky thing because it's like it's spanning all these genres. Is there a way to represent that? So I think that's something that makes it tricky about having a novel that crosses so many genres.
Yeah, and a shout out to Greg Chapman for doing a great cover.
Absolutely.
Who, by the way, is another Southeast Queenslander, so another coincidence.
Yeah.
But like, that's really interesting. So it is a romance, but it's not at the peak. At the peak, using another term of the genre matrix, if you want to. And that makes sense.
It is probably a subplot. In the sense that, like, a lot of action movies, like the big action movies, have sort of the subplot of the, girlfriend or whatever. Like, I think I am a feminist and I'm forever trying to address those historical imbalances within, fiction, movies. So I think that's one reason why the female character is that little bit more important in the story. Zerika is really important within the story. Andalou also really holds his own, but he is a little. Is he the B plot character perhaps?
Yeah. Yeah, look, I don't want to belabor this, but actually, this question does interest me. I think that you said before that many books do have many elements to them because you want to make it a realistic world, and you want to draw the attention and the empathy of the reader into the story. And so, I mean, it goes without saying. I mean, you could write an adventure story and have a couple of romantic dalliances, but it could be terribly two-dimensional. And may I add, I've read quite a few action and hardcore action type stories that does in fact exactly do that.
Yeah.
I mean, you could even argue, like 007, in the movies.
He always has a dalliance. Or Jack Reacher. If you've read the Jack Reacher novels, there's usually a woman that he has to rescue.
That's right. Yeah. And I mean, it's partly the women are just simply deliberately secondary, because the story is about in many of these movies or books or whatever are the male is the central character. It's a in some ways it could easily become two-dimensional in itself unless it's well treated. But I think that in your case, what you did was the right thing. And that is, if you wanted to have true three-dimensionality, and an important feature of the book is that people who are supposed to be enemies become lovers, then you just need to draw more. You need to draw more. So yeah, so I think it's a positive point. From any dimension you look at it, I think the romance element is an important element. So
Though there are also like other important relationships as well, like Zerika and her sister, for example. That's like a really beautiful relationship too.
Oh,
So.
yeah, absolutely. And maybe we can talk a little. Actually, yeah, let's talk about that then. So we've got the romance. So let's talk about characters a bit more. Maybe we can talk about Zerika and Andalus a little bit later. But just their relationship. But other people, the protagonists, the secondary characters, and also those who are closer than secondary, like sister. Tell me a bit about some of those relationships and characters.
Yeah, well, so Katiali is Zerika's little sister. She doesn't like to climb, but she always goes along with Zerika to help her. She's a weaver. She would rather spend her time weaving. And she has feelings for Zerika's enemy, Yornan, which creates a lot of tension between them. And plays out in a very interesting and dangerous way for her. Something I really like about that dynamic is that the Yornan that she perceives is a totally different person to how Zerika sees her enemy. Because I think sometimes we have that in families where someone will be completely in love with someone, and the rest of the family's like, oh my gosh. How can that be? So I thought that was a really interesting conflict for them to experience, and as they go along together and help each other and talk about it, and things are revealed. Yeah, that was really fun to write, and that sisterly love, because I don't have a sister myself, so I think she's the invented sister that I wish I had. Yeah, so that's one character. And Yornan.
What about protagonists?
Yeah, so Yornan is the key. Well, I guess Andalou is also a antagonist.
Sorry, antagonist. Sorry, I say protagonist. Yeah. I meant antagonist.
No, I knew what you meant. Andalou is an antagonist, but when they first meet, he actually rescues Zerika, so that sets them off in an interesting way. And they do have those immediately, like that attraction to each other. And then she finds out who he is, and that he's the enemy. So he's one, and Yornan is the main antagonist, and he's really bad. I mean, he really wants Zerika dead, and he's done various things throughout their past to make life very difficult for her, and that continues on that way. Yeah, he's a really, really bad guy.
Where did you get inspired by his? What information did you use to help create him?
That's a good question. I don't think I know anyone like him, and the things that he does, like technically in that first scene, I really had to think that through mechanically, for how that would practically work. I can't imagine anyone really doing that in real life. But I guess, I don't know. I don't know. It just seems like a terrible thing to do to someone, is to threaten to cut their rope while they're climbing. And that's the sort of stuff that he does, and like totally gaslights her in other ways as well, which are revealed that I won't reveal in the novel. But yeah, I think he's just like everything bad that I could, but also has redeeming features in some ways. Like he does genuinely love Katiali, her sister. So that's an interesting tension.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tricky question on my part, because I mean, I don't know about you, but I've got a feeling you are the same, and that is that there are characters that you write that are either directly taken from an experience from someone else or a composite, and there are other times where you just simply fabricate it right from
Yeah.
the bottom, up.
Yeah.
And obviously, and look, when you've got bad stuff going on, there's a lot of material you can work with anyway, just simply because they're bad.
And I think like I have a totally evil mind. The terrible ideas I come up with are terrible, so I can just draw on my own darkest places to come up with good villains.
Actually, I should say to those who are listening and don't know you, is that you've talked constantly about this book, of course, which is a fantasy. Yeah. It's primarily a fantasy genre book, and you've also talked about some of your unfinished works that are fantasy and science fiction. But the reality is that when we first started getting short stories from you, they were all horror.
Yeah.
And that lines up with your the way you think.
Yeah, it's fascinating that horror writers write such horrifying stuff, but they're such lovely people. And maybe maybe it's just that we're very creative people. Maybe everyone has all these horrifying ideas. I don't know, but yeah, I definitely have quite a good capacity to imagine bad things.
Look, I can vouch for what you say. As a publisher, I'd say about 2/3 of our products are horror, and every single person who's involved in the writing or editing or whatever are all really nice people and wouldn't hurt flies.
Yeah. But sometimes I have ideas and I think, wow, I'm not going to write that because I don't want to inspire anyone to actually, you know what I mean, go and do something terrible. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted everyone to know that because
I seem so nice, right?
maybe to be nice, me being nice, it's about trying to reveal who you really are.
Yeah, true.
All right, look, we'll just finish off the character side of it now. I mean, you've talked already a fair bit about Zerica and Andalou, and without a doubt, and I can vouch for it because I've read it. They are three-dimensional characters. They are the anchor points really for a reader in the book. So, what did either of those characters or both get drawn from a particular experience or a particular people? I mean, we talked about how the different phase levels of being inspired. What about those two?
Not really anyone in particular. Like I am inspired by a lot of people who I see climbing, like Lynn Hill or Yanya Gambret. To some degree, I think Zerica is a dream. Like she is the climber that I would be if I could be that amazing. For Andalou, like he was the character who I connected with the most first, and I think that I felt like that his struggle was really interesting, and I could connect with that. Yeah.
No, that's fair enough. You mentioned Zerica is the one that you wish you could be like from a climbing point of view. So
yeah.
But is there a little bit of you in Zerica anyway?
I don't know. That's a tough one.
I don't mean like 80%.
I probably tried to keep myself out of the character, but I mean, is it perhaps unavoidable that there's something of yourself in the character? It's possible. I think I'm probably a more caring person than her. Like, one of the things I admire about her is that she's really focused on getting to the top of the mountain. So I don't I don't think I'm that focused, but maybe I am.
No, that's fair enough. I like asking that question here and there with authors because I think I could argue that in much of the writing that I've done, I tend not to draw very much of myself into them. I try to visualize a completely new person or influenced by someone else.
Mhm.
But at the same time, there are times when you, especially with internal monologues and things like that, um, there may be an experience that you've had that was quite serious or important in your life, and you can draw that in. That can happen too.
I think something that I share with them is the sense that, like a lot of some people feel that climbing, like you're a dirtbag, you're wasting your time, you don't have a real job. So like those kind of things, when you start to prioritize something like a hobby like that, and it becomes so obsessive, I definitely identify with that aspect of both their characters.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, I just wanted to tease to what extent, and
Yeah.
everyone's different, which is really cool. Um,
Mm.
Look, I think we've covered. We've covered the story, we've covered the characters, the inspiration. I think we've covered pretty much everything that really is critical uh, for people to understand not only the story, the novel, but
Yeah.
also get a bit of an insight into who you are and how you were inspired to write it in the first place. And that's
Yeah.
what I wanted. That's what I wanted to convey to those who are viewing this
Mhm.
podcast because it's important. It really makes a difference when you read a book. No, hey, this is what she was talking about.
Yeah. And I think like it is a very different story. It's maybe a bit of a gamble for readers, but I think they should just check it out and see what they think. Give it a go. Give those first few pages a go, even though it is something different.
Yeah, and I want to echo the point. This is me being just cautious here. We spent a fair bit of time talking about romance, and the reason why was because it's just a very interesting structural element of the book. But
Mm.
as you pointed out, and I'm
Mm.
just echoing, yeah, it's got romantic elements. It makes the characters real. But I mean, when I read it, for me, certainly the paramount element of the book is the action and
The
the
quest.
and intrigue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
The adventure is key.
and I did use the word thriller, and I will stick
Mm.
with it.
Mm.
Some books can be written where you've got beautifully described action, but if it's written well enough and people find themselves on the edge of their seat and they want to go to the next chapter,
Mm.
you could argue that it starts to move into thriller level.
Yeah, and it has been called a page turner as well. So,
Well,
and reviews are mostly 5 stars. So I'm very happy about that.
do you hear that, everyone? Right? It's a page turner and it's got mostly 5-star reviews.
And
I
I
think
would
that's,
love more reviews. I don't mind if they're not 5 star, but
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, look, we'll wind down now. But I'll just mention before I completely wind down that on this channel, in the notes below, there'll be links to various places, including the main page from the publishing point of view of Staerstone, and in it is going to be a lot of links to where you can purchase the book if you want to purchase it. But I'll also separately have a link just straight out to a purchasing link, and you can get ebooks or print books or whatever just by clicking on one spot. So if you're interested, and if you like climbing, if you like adventure, you like romance, you like three-dimensional characters, page turners, you name it, I think it's well worth just having a look.
And that would be absolutely awesome. And feel free to get in touch with me. I'm really active on TikTok, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook. So I would love to hear what anyone thinks if they read it.
Now, if they're looking for you, it's HK Stubbs.
HK Stubbs or Helen Stubbs. I think hopefully you'll find me with a search.
Okay, no
And
worries.
with the links that we'll provide.
Okay, look. This was a great conversation. Thank you so much. I must admit, I love digging deep into writer techniques. And yet again, I'm satisfied. So I'm satisfied. I'm hoping everyone else is satisfied. But it's been a delight to talk to you, Helen, and for everyone out there, thank you very much for watching. And